Front Theater has opened their doors to us for this event at no charge year over year, which helps us keep this programming free. They're also one of our community grant recipients as the only LGBTQ theater here in Atlanta. And so I invite you to check out their schedule as well. They have a show running through the end of the month. It's called Porcelain. You can check it out on their Facebook page. And also I wanted to say thank you to AARP Georgia. Hillary with AARP graciously provided the food for us tonight. Did you get some delicious food? So Hillary has provided that for us, again, at no charge so that we can take care of you and all of our honorees. So we appreciate everyone who's made this possible. Just as a note for those of you who are interested in the 49th annual Atlanta Pride event this October. This year's the 50th anniversary of Stonewall and the Georgia Day Liberation Front. Next year's the 50th anniversary of Atlanta Pride. Applications for market, festival, advertising, entertainment, all of those things go live at 9 a.m. this Thursday. We have a short early bird period, so if you know you want to participate, get in there, get the best prices. If you have any questions, see our staff, and we'll be happy to help you with that. Then we'll turn it over to Hillary for just a brief word now.
So just real quick, thank you all for coming. Thank you for supporting Touching Up Our Roots and Atlanta Pride. Thank you very much for your support of AARP over the last few years. I think I've been in this role for going on 5 years, so I really appreciate all the support. And speaking of support, we do have some programs that we'd like you all to pay attention to. Who has gotten one of our hot off the presses LGBTQ plus prepare to care guides? See, thank you, Dr. Biggers. Thank you. And to say, please say somebody because our state director is here. I don't want her to think I don't work. So please go stop by the table and pick up one Prepare Care guides. When National Office sent me a copy and asked me to skim through it, I was really thinking that it was going to be the exact same guide that they send out for every other community with some different pictures. And it really wasn't. There were real resources, there were real websites that are actually applicable to the community that can help with caregiving. We all know that we are all going to either be a caregiver, we've been a caregiver, we'll need a caregiver, or we're going to give care to someone. Every one of us in this room is going to fit into that. And now we have a guide that can help us. So please stop by the table and get that. And also stop by the table and get one of my cards if you're interested in volunteering. So since it's going to be the 49th annual Atlanta Pride coming up this fall, it will also be the 4th, I believe, annual Gray Pride. So we have a whole Gray Pride area at the Plaza Park. It has turned into a very big production and lots of fun. I was talking to Kimball earlier. We even had a full-on dance party, but we had a Vogue off in front of the building this year, which was not planned, but that did happen. And we also had a J-set competition that was not planned, but that's kind of what happens at Atlanta Pride. So please, if you're interested in volunteering, please grab one of the cards. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you. And Dave, Touching Up Our Roots.
Hi, I'm Dave Hayward. I'm the coordinator of Touching Up Our Roots, and I wanted to give you a little context for tonight. Turn the house lights on. Anyway, we came up with this with Atlanta Pride, and we're so grateful to Atlanta Pride. And people know Laura Barton. She was the program. Laura Barton. So Laura and I were talking about doing this, and originally we were going to try it for Thanksgiving and do a sort of a Thanksgiving theme, and then many things happened, and we said, well, let's do the holiday after Christmas. And we said, Valentines! So ever since then, we've really done our founding Valentines. This is the 5th year. And as Jamie was saying, we've been doing it decade by decade, and we realized that, we don't have a complete decade. So we thought we would do the thing about honoring pioneers in the fight against AIDS, which of course is still very much with us. We have a table out in the lobby, and I wanted to call out Keller Berry. Keller, where are you? Who's videoing it? And his assistant, Ryan. Yes. So come see our table and talk to them, and they want to do sound bites and things like that. Touching Up Our Roots, I want to give credit to Liz Troop, who helped start Liz Troop. and lesbian pioneer helped start First Tuesday with Gil Roberson, one of our honorees tonight, and she came up with the idea for that to be an LGBT history project. And I said, oh, I love that, I'm enchanted by that. And so I stole that from her with permission. She said, you can use it, you can use Touching Up Our Roots. So it's also the idea that, you know, it's the LGBT story project, and it's a little playful. So let's have a little fun with, you know, we all need to touch up our roots, if we have roots. If we have them. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and it's in the program, is that we're talking about 50 years. So we're hearing a great deal about 50 years, you know, anniversary of Stonewall, the end of June this year, 50 years ago. And then what people don't know, and that we're, you know, here to tell them, is that it's also the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Georgia Gay Liberation Front. And that started when they had a raid on the Annecy Mall Mini Cinema. It was August 5th, 1969. And they raided the theater. It was showing Andy Warhol's Lonesome Cowboys. It's in your program. And it had, you know, oh my God, you know, naked men, cowboys with each other. So they raided the movie, and they detained everybody and interrogated everyone. And Abby Drew, who's one of the people who's still big activist today, said that the police kept Abby. The police kept asking her, does your husband know where you are? And she went, well, I'm not going to get into that. So anyway, as a result of that raid, the August 5th, 1969 raid, the Georgia Gay Liberation Front started. And we want to give tribute, you know, pay tribute to the people that started that. And sadly, the main movers and shakers, the people that were the main leaders, have passed. And of course, one of the main reasons for that is AIDS, that several of the main leaders have passed from AIDS. But I really love what I heard that Yoko Ono said when they asked her about missing John Lennon, and she said, now he's always with him. And I like that. So that's what I try to think, you know, they're with us, and definitely on your shoulders we stand. So, but there's no substitute for having them with us actually in person. What I also wanted to do to talk a little bit about, and hopefully maybe to give a little strength, hope, and experience to everyone here, if so. I'm also celebrating 50 years myself next year of being a gay activist. I was at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and after Stonewall, which probably people know, there were a lot of organizations that formed the Gay Activist Alliance and the different gay liberation fronts. And they came to D.C. in about January of 1970. And as soon as there was something to do, I did it. I wanted to do something. And so I got involved with that. And so I've been doing it really, you know, since 1970. And a friend of mine, when I was a teenager, I had to fight my parents to go to the college I wanted to go to George Washington University. And he said, Dave, you have what it takes. So maybe that's what's got me here today. But I just wanted people to know that you can persevere, you can keep on going on, you know. And I got a little discouraged a couple of weeks ago because you still, you know, get emails from hell. Feliz cumpleaños, mi amiga, querida. So we're just going to come and talk to us about some of the more personal aspects of people with it. Thank you.
Yeah. Is this a good level for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. But I have to ask, why still in 2019 these things are always shaped like this? That's not the way I go. You know, it's more. Anyhow, I wrote a really hot speech to be here tonight, and apparently it made an unscheduled appearance between my back door and my car, so I'm just gonna have to wing it. Pero primero yo quiero decir algo a mi gente Latinx, okay? no tenemos tiempo, pero entendemos importante de presente. ¿Sí? That's the concept of presente, which means, being here, really owning it, giving ourselves space of that. And one example for me of presente was when I went to New York for Stonewall 25. Because I'm really old, I'm going to be 65 on Thursday. And I can't even tell you the kind of frisson, hair on the back of the neck, standing, that Stonewall 25 gave me. For the parade, and this parade went on and on, miles. I wanted to be in Times Square because it has so much of queer history. We're just right there. I tried to get off the subway stop at 42nd Street. I swear, you get on the platform, and we were like this, shoulder to shoulder, and other parts to other parts. And I could not get up the stairs. So I said, well, fuck it, I'm going to go to 57th Street subway, near the UN, and the Stonewall veterans, which you can go to stonewallvet.org and you can find out about them. They were in their top-down Cadillac, just representing all the way down past the United Nations. There were more than 100 countries, people from 100 countries, attending Stonewall 25. If you don't believe me, go to episode 309 of In the Life. It's full of it. And I recommend it. It's really incredible. And people were presente. And that's an important concept. With the AIDS quilt, you will find presente stitched into a number of the panels because that's what people wanted to say. They'll say presente or estoy presente, depending. I want to tell you about two panels that I was forced to, unfortunately, embroider for friends of mine. I remember Ray Kluka. He was an activist who was really presente in the face of a lot of crap, not just from the city government, but also from local activists, because we tend to eat our own. But yeah, literally and figuratively. But it's not always a good thing. Anyhow, I was on the phone with him in the hospital because he had that pneumonia that just killed a number of people. People who were just caught in the crossfire of the AIDS Holocaust. And every few words, I would hear him going, trying to get a breath, because his lungs were filled with fluid. But Ray wanted to keep going. He was someone who was presente. And then with my friend Charlie St. John, I don't know if Liz is here or not. No, Dave said she wasn't. But anyhow, 7 days a week, members of his queer family, including me, would go see him, and each of us took a day, and either give him lunch or dinner, because you have to get people to eat. You can't let them take the weight off, and just hang out. I used to go visit him in the hospital because he was there many times before he died. And I got friendly with the Jamaican nurses there who took care of the PWAs, and I just said he's my brother, even though he didn't look anything alike. But I did have his medical power of attorney. And I would be writing Marta, because I used to work for Marta, and I would have someone say, "How is your brother?" And it would be one of these brave, compassionate nurses. And I would say, "Oh, he's doing all right," because he's home. He's not in a bed somewhere. But the last time I saw him, Liz didn't find him at his apartment when she went to bring him food. And so she tried to figure out, well, where he might be. Where he was on a gurney in Grady Hospital ER for 26 hours. His last 26 hours. But we didn't know that because no one would tell her anything because she wasn't his sister, whatever. So they called me and I came in. It was about 7 hours later and they didn't know where he was. Grady did not know. And there was a social worker, very nice lady, and she made 4 different calls for the Grady internal phone system. And finally she says, "He's gone." "He's gone where? Y'all have lost him." "No, he's gone." "What?" And that's one reason why I worked on Charlie's quilt. But when he was alive, and even in his death, he was presente. So was Ray. And I don't want to leave you with that. I want to leave us with this. I'm talking about my homegirl, Janae Monet. Okay, Janae Monet, she is something. She is a brilliant artist, and she's hot. And even at my advanced age, I still appreciate that. I think that's one of the last things to go. Anyhow, she was up for several Grammys in this last iteration of the Grammys, which, I'm sorry, a lot of that was just disappointing. Anyhow, she did not win. But she has always been presente, okay? And she dedicated her Grammy nominations to, and I'm quoting, my trans brothers and sisters, because they are always left out of this stuff. She's just presente with that. And I want to say that when you show up and you do the work, you are presente, and you are alive, and you are what we need, and we love, and we want, and we don't want to leave anyone behind. Everyone. You live it, you say it, you do it, presente. And I want to thank everyone for giving me the chance to show up and be presente. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There's so much history that we have as a community that often we don't pass along and pass down. And as a growing generation of people who sometimes doesn't have that kind of access, it's important to hear from other people that we may not always talk to and see out in the community. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
But we put our shoulder to the karmic wheel and it moved. And the genie is out of the bottle and they are not putting us back in.
Yes. Amen. All right, so we're going to move along with our program. I have one special guest to introduce before we begin honoring our honorees. So please welcome to the stage, James Yancey, the founder of Belong.
Yeah.
So if you haven't heard of Belong, it's an organization started in Atlanta around peer coaching for the LGBT community. We founded it about 2.5 years ago. And so one of the people I was lucky to meet was Dave Hayward through that organization. We've conspired several times in many ways in community building, LGBT history. And so 3 years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, for this event, we thought, you know, if I put myself in the shoes of an activist, and I said, you know, if I was Maria's age, so she put her own age, you know, what would I want as an honoree? For me personally, there's nothing more satisfying than to have someone from a future generation who somehow either directly or indirectly benefited from our collective work that we did and pass that down. And so we thought 3 years ago, it'd be nice to have younger people from multiple generations come up and say thank you and share a little bit of their own tribute in lots of different ways. And so that's what we'll do again this year. And so for each person, as we call them up to honor them, we'll also have someone from a different background and a different story in the LGBT community that's younger than Maria, come and give a tribute. So,
Okay, I'm not ancient.
and you brought it
alright?
up, I just didn't know.
I was in the second year of the honorees, you know?
Okay, there you go. It's all good. So without further ado, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you. All right. So, our first honoree is Bishop O.C. Allen III. We will actually have a youth come and speak. Hi.
Alright.
Hey guys, I'm Brandon Maddox. I've lived in Atlanta, Georgia for over 10 years now, and I've been a part of the LGBT community since I've got involved in marriage equality activism, as well as the, I guess, a subset or the Black LGBT community. And I finally get to meet you, Bishop O.C. Allen. I've heard so much about you and what you've done for people who share our demographic, not only for the work of making sure that African American LGBT citizens are included in the work that's been done for HIV and AIDS activism. That in the words of Shirley Chisholm, she said that if you're not if you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding
That's
chair.
right.
And that's what you've done. That's so important. And also, from my background as a Black Christian, I think it's so important to have people like you, African American, gay members of the clergy, that help us work on repairing our relationship with the divine. That is so deep, so important, and it goes into our love for self. So I just wanted to thank you for providing that here for those of us like us.
Wow. The worst thing to do is give a preacher a mic at the beginning of the program. First of all, I want to say thank you to Atlanta Pride and to everyone who has worked really hard to lift up our community, to empower every person who calls themselves part of the human family, if you will. I want to say thank you. In so many ways, when I found out that I was being honored, I don't feel that I deserve this in any way. Number one, because really at the end of the day, you are only as great as the people around you. And so because of people like Melissa Scott and Avion Watson and Vaughn Alvarez and so many people, I am only who I am because of them. The second thing is I will say that I don't know how to even be honored because I am still doing funerals. I am still writing eulogies. I am still visiting funeral directors and picking out caskets. as recent as a few months ago. I'm still bearing young black gay men who have the legacy of tortured readings of scripture and bad and toxic theology in their blood. Young people who are a part of the legacy of white supremacy and racism and inequality, sexism and homophobia, and all of the things that have continued to ravage all of us. So I would say that my work will not be effective until there are no more transmissions, until I still can see, or until I can see that there are people who are HIV positive in treatment, HIV negative people who are on PrEP, and all of us participating in the healing and the wholeness of our community. The reality is, and I would hope that you would give me the license to say this, at the end of the day, many of you know that I work with Atlanta Black Gay Pride, and I'm so honored. This honor means a lot to come from Atlanta Pride. The reality is that we have inherited the hostility and the challenges of Atlanta's gay community and all that has happened over the years. And we are only as strong as our leaders. If we are not careful, we will continue the divisions and the challenges. So I hope that this moment means for you as much as it means for me a moment of unity, a moment of togetherness and wholeness. I want to just read this. It was a commercial that Apple Computer put out in the 80s, and it meant so much to me, and I believe this represents all of us. It says, here's to the crazy ones. The misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules. They have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you cannot do is ignore them.
That's right.
Because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see them as genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Thank you.
How are we feeling out there? Feeling good, right? So next up, we are going to honor Dr. Edith Diggers.
Hello, everyone. I cannot put into words how honored I am to be around so many people that have done so much for the LGBT community. When James asked me to do this, I was very nervous, but also after he told me who I was honoring, I was a little scared. At first because I thought maybe James had gone a little crazy. Second was because how the hell am I going to relate to an older black woman? Because while I have faced some discrimination in my life, and some of it has been my sexuality, most of it is because I was the little white girl from the other side of the track who was always dirty and her parents didn't love her. And then when I got taken away, of course that ended, then I got discrimination because I was a foster child. But then I realized that was it. Well, again, I have experienced discrimination because of my sexuality.
it has not been a lot. My parents were luckily very accepting. I mean, if they weren't, I have people like James and Reed and people to turn to and get help. And then I remembered another way I can relate is that my junior year of high school, I had an HIV scare. Me and my boyfriend were like many high school couples, very on and off again. Sometimes lasting as long as a week, other times lasting just the end of the class period. But you see, during one of those off periods, he saw a girl who later found out she had HIV and it was progressing to AIDS. She didn't know when she got it, but it could have been before they slept together. And I just remember how terrified I was, because even though it was 2014, saying you have HIV was basically a death sentence. It would have been 10 or 20 years from now, but you would still die from this disease. But then I realized that was my only problem. I would not have a problem with finding health care. I would not be treated like a leopard from everybody in the community. And it's because of people like Ms. Figures and all of y'all being honored here tonight. And yeah, I'm so grateful for all of what you all have done. And we still have so much work to do. My friend committed suicide in middle school because he was gay and his parents did not accept it. He felt like he had nowhere to go. People like being bisexual are being told by people from both sides of the fence, the LGBT community and the straight community, that we don't exist. We are either experimenting, we have not accepted that we're gay yet, and because there are still people who are being denied health care, and there are still people who are being treated so much differently for this disease, this horrible disease. But it's people like you who have made this long road a lot easier. And while we still have a long way to go, I hope that one day, maybe a little white girl, I don't know, will be standing up here and saying the same thing I am saying, and that is that I want to do so much more, and that's because of people like you. I want to do so much more to help out. And so thank you so much.
That's great.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So, good evening, everyone. No, first of all, I just want to thank. Now, what's more challenging than a preacher with a mic at the beginning coming after such a dynamic? That's a brother. Thank you. He's one of my heroes. I had a speech, but I just want to say how I started with all of this. Oh, first of all, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for Atlanta Pride, as well as AARP and Touching Our Roots for this award. A long time ago, I think this was right before the Olympics, in the New England Journal of Medicine, so that is the top tier of medical journal, there was an editorial. And what it basically said was that there were at that time, there were some medications called protease inhibitors. And these were new at the time for HIV. And there was an article written by someone who was supposed to be a scholar. And it basically said, there's certain groups of people who should not be given the opportunity to have the new medication. And it's because they require a high degree of adherence. In other words, you had to take your medicine. And these people were just not capable, did not have the intellect, did not have the economic prowess to do this. Now, and guess who they were talking about? They were talking about my folks. They were talking about black folks. They were talking about gay and lesbian folks. They were talking about transgender folks. They were talking about all of us. But no, we did not have the wherewithal to be able to take our medication. And that was a turning point for me. I thought, these are the very people that I get up every day to take care of. These are the very people that I learn something from. They say, Doc, we learn a lot from you. No, it's just the opposite. I've learned so much from taking care of people who were courageously and are courageously living with HIV and AIDS. Unfortunately, it's been, we are 30 plus years into the epidemic, 38 I think. And when I started, there was only AZT. And there were people, a lot of people who had what I call the old phase of AIDS. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, that's their reality now. A lot of people have not been tested. A lot of people have no clue that they are positive.